Welcome to the Dance NYC 2022 Symposium, Life Cycles, Livelihoods, Legacies. We will be with you shortly. Thank you all for joining us for another full day of sessions. Tonight, we will hold our third and final keynote event, Building Community Around Dance for a Future Society. We're so glad you're with us, and please engage in the chat feature. Share with us where you're tuning in from and how you're doing. Accessibility. ASL interpretation and live captioning will be provided for today's session. A stream-to-text link will be posted in the chat and participation guide for access to the live transcription. Stay connected with us by posting your takeaways on social media using the hashtags DanceSymp, DanceNYC 2022, and DanceSymp2022. On Instagram at dance.nyc, on Twitter at dance.nyc, and on Facebook at dance/NYC. Community guidelines. Based on Dance NYC's values of justice, equity, and inclusion, we agree to share our opinions, challenge perspectives, and engage or debate respectfully, and acknowledge and course correct if harm is caused. Honor everyone's personhood and humanity. Not tolerate speech that is disparaging, abusive, violent, or that is intended to defame someone's character publicly. Some features not to miss. Build your agenda of sessions. Connect with other attendees. Join community conversations. Visit the exhibitor hall. Don't forget to check out the 2022 Symposium digital program book. We are happy to be in community with you. Thanks for joining. Welcome to the Dance NYC 2022 Symposium, Life Cycles, Livelihoods, Legacies. We will be with you shortly. Thank you all for joining us for another full day of sessions. Tonight, we will hold our third and final keynote event, Building Community Around Dance for a Future Society. We're so glad you're with us, and please engage in the chat feature. Share with us where you're tuning in from and how you're doing. Accessibility. ASL interpretation and live captioning will be provided for today's session. A stream-to-text link will be posted in the chat and participation guide for access to the live transcription. Stay connected with us by posting your takeaways on social media using the hashtags DanceSymp, DanceNYC 2022, and DanceSymp2022. On Instagram at dance.nyc, on Twitter at dance.nyc, and on Facebook at dance/NYC. Community guidelines. Based on Dance NYC's values of justice, equity, and inclusion, we agree to share our opinions, challenge perspectives, and engage or debate respectfully, and acknowledge and course correct if harm is caused. Honor everyone's personhood and humanity. Not tolerate speech that is disparaging, abusive, violent, or that is intended to defame someone's character publicly. Some features not to miss. Build your agenda of sessions. Connect with other attendees. Join community conversations. Visit the exhibitor hall. Don't forget to check out the 2022 Symposium digital program book. We are happy to be in community with you. Thanks for joining. Good evening. My name is Shani Jamila. I'm a conceptual artist, the founder of Lineage, which is a storytelling project that centers the voices of contemporary socially engaged Black artists, and the interim manager of programming here at Dance NYC. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm calling in from the unceded territory of the Lenape, also known as New York City. where I've been a long-term resident. I'm an African-American woman. Today, I'm wearing a black and white patterned dress, bright red lipstick that makes me happy, and silver swirly earrings that are set against straight black hair. Behind me is a white wall of doors and two posters from the Dance NYC archives.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alejandra Duque Cifuentes, and I'm the Executive Director of Dance NYC. My pronouns are she, her, and I identify as a non-disabled white Latina cis woman, originally from Medellin, Colombia, the unceded territory of the Nutaves people. Currently, home to Embera Catillo, Shami, Dovida, Senu, Quechua, and Inga populations. I have been working and living in Lenape-Hoking for 15 years now, and I'm coming to you live from Dance NYC's offices in Gramercy, New York City. I am a white woman with mid-length brown hair that is pulled back. I am wearing a red and tan striped long sleeve shirt with a moonstone necklace and a red bold lip. I'm in my office, and behind me, you can see two framed graphics, one in orange that reads New Yorkers for Dance, and the other in magenta, which reads Artists are necessary workers. Thank you for joining us for the concluding event of the completely digital 2022 Symposium held on the Whova platform. ASL interpreters from Sign Nexus and closed captioning services provided by the Viscardi Center will be available throughout the session. A stream-to-text link will also be available and posted in the chat for further reference. I'd like to voice our gratitude to our ASL interpreters, Aisha Simpson and Stephanie Fain, and our live captioner, Annabelle Thompson, for their work with us tonight. We will screen two brief videos at the top of tonight's session. Written and or audio descriptions for the videos can be accessed via the participation guide, and we will share the link in the chat so that you can access that. We will post speaker information in the description below and under the speaker module on the left side of your Whova web app or the menu of your Whova mobile app. This information is also available on the Dance NYC website.
Feel free to post comments you want to share with the community in the chat section to the right of this event room, as well as in the Zoom chat, which is embedded into the Whova platform. Dance NYC moderators will be interacting with you in both chat audiences. When the session ends, there will be a session follow-up in the community section of Whova where you can continue the conversation. As we are at the mercy of technology, we want to remind you that there may be delays, sound issues, or changing circumstances that might occur during our time together. We invite you to extend us and each other grace and patience. Lastly, we hope that you will help us to amplify these conversations. Repost, tag us, and share your takeaways on Twitter at DanceNYC, Instagram at dance.nyc, and Facebook, dance/NYC, using the hashtag DanceSymp. And now it's our collective privilege to bear witness to two videos presented by the Clark Center and Hunter College, respectively. When they conclude, we'll take a short break before our keynote panel begins.
My name is Enrique Cruz de Jesus. I am the Artistic Director of the Alpha Omega Theatrical Dance Company. Today's performance is a special collaboration between the Clark Center, New York, and the Alpha Omega Theatrical Dance Company. The two share a long history that dates back to the 1970s when Alpha Omega performed there. The piece that you will be seeing today is called Elegy, choreographed by Marshall Romaine, in costume by Elio Pomare, with music by Michael Wimberly, and performed by Donna Clark. Marshall Romaine was the previous artistic director of the Alpha Omega Theatrical Dance Company. and this dedication is to his life. Sadly, we lost Marshall too soon in January of this year. His contribution to modern dance spread across generations, and his legacy is broad and important to share. This piece is a memorial about the passing of a loved one. We mourn the loss of Marshall, but his work will live on. Please enjoy this special performance, and a warm thank you to Dance NYC. Marshall Romaine was my friend and mentor. Please enjoy Elegy, choreographed by Marshall Romaine.
Greetings, I'm Jennifer Rabb, and I have the extraordinary privilege of serving as the president of Hunter College, the place where the American dream still comes true. Today, I am so glad to once again have as our partner Dance NYC and to help support this wonderful gathering they create each year. Next year, we hope to work with Dance NYC to have them back on campus where activity is starting to resume at Hunter College. Now, it gives me great pleasure to present the video screening of a dance film titled Through the Walks Of by Lena Sierra. Hunter College's dance department serves New York City by providing a culturally relevant and artistically rigorous dance curriculum towards a Bachelor of Arts, Master of Arts, including an incredible dance certification program, and a Master's of Fine Arts in Dance. Lena Sierra is one of our exceptional students in the Hunter College Dance Program for Teachers, the Arnhold Graduate Dance Education Program. This program has been educating dance instructors to teach in the 1,800 public schools across New York City with pride for many, many years. As we educate tomorrow's dance artist and scholar, Hunter Dance is honored to join with Dance NYC in its mission to promote the knowledge, appreciation, practice, and performance of dance in the metropolitan New York City area. We are proud to be the partners of Dance NYC and to bring this film by one of our students to you today. Thank you all so much for being with us and enjoy this screening.
Live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. It is between light and darkness, and everyone must choose their side. I warn you, the trip will not be easy. Once you choose to walk in the light, your path will lead you places. Choose, choose, choose. Live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. It is between light and darkness, and everyone must choose their side. I warn you, the trip will not be easy. Once you choose to walk in the light, your path will lead you places.
Thank you very much. Both of those videos were just beautiful. At this juncture, we invite you all to take a 5-minute pause. When we return, the keynote panel will begin.
Welcome back, folks, and thank you for being with us. I am so pleased to introduce tonight's opening keynote, Art Making and Humanity, Interrogating Attitudes on Culture, Race, and Politics Across Decades, moderated by the incomparable Onye Ozuzu, Dean of the College of the Arts at University of Florida and Artistic Director of Ozuzu Dances. Onye.
Good evening. Thank you so much for inviting me here tonight and for this humbling and exciting role as moderator of this conversation. My name is Onye Ozuzu, and as Alejandra said, I am a dancer and choreographer. I'm also doing my best as the Dean of the College of the Arts at the University of Florida. My pronouns are she, her. I am the daughter of the Igbo people of southeastern Nigeria on my father's side, and the Mennonite of the Alsace region between France and Germany on my mother's. I am speaking to you now from the indigenous lands of the Timucua and Poblano peoples, currently known as Gainesville, Florida. I am sitting here in the office of our lighting designer here in the School of Theater and Dance. So there are all manner of lights and wires all around me. So I do have my background blurred. I have my hair pulled back. I'm an African-American woman. I'm wearing some large metallic bronze-colored earrings with a gray scarf with red flowers on it around my shoulders. I want to thank the incredible, thoughtful, hardworking organizers at Dance NYC for bringing us together today to build knowledge and to pack each other's bags for the future. At an important global tipping point for change, this conversation that we're going to have in the next few minutes forecasts what building community around dance will demand in the dance field and beyond in the wider society as we know it. Knowledgeable practitioners in technology, education, producing, presenting, and economic thought are gathered to help us discuss the world that they are preparing for and how they will serve it. Each of these humans that I'm about to introduce, I think in their own particular way and in their own particular contexts, appears to be people who are building ships while they're flying them. Ahmed Hafez asserts choice over time itself, and in so doing invites audiences to slip with him and his collaborators into fluidities of perspectives. Chris Walker turns the handle on a colonialist blueprint in predominantly white institutions of higher education and insists on a horizontality that includes students who come from and with hip hop culture in a manner that opens access to the resources and privileges of the institution without dismembering them from the culture that they come from, and thereby floats forward an experiment in the embodied possibilities of a culturally sustaining pedagogy. Kristopher McDowell is experimenting with the infrastructure of producing, unraveling the powers of producing and its linearities, inviting in collaboration, also horizontality, and bringing what used to be at the bottom up and into the center of things. And Kamal Sinclair sits at the table with technologists, economists, and world bankers who are moving forward from some of their most recent catastrophes to code our next reality. And she insists that we, artists, must be at the center of any creations of next worlds. These are systems thinkers, rule rewriters, and architects of context. In this time when we globally have no choice but to acknowledge that we all can feel paradigms shifting around, through, and within us. Who better to call into community? All right, y'all, let's build. I am going to introduce each one of these amazing panelists one by one and ask them to introduce themselves, and then we're going to get started. Up first, Adham Hafez is a choreographer, curator, theorist, and artist. His work encompasses post-colonial studies, the Anthropocene and performance, politics of choreography, Arab art history, knowledge production, and climate change. As an artist and theorist, his work has been presented internationally at world-renowned venues, including Habel Am Ufer, Cairo Opera House, MoMA PS1, among others. He publishes essays and texts in Arabic, English, and French. He's the founder of HaRaKa platform based out of New York, Berlin, and Cairo, and dedicated to Middle East performance, media, and dance. He's also the founder of Wizara, a new ecosystem built by artists for artists on the blockchain, enabling artists to experiment with digital tools in a Web 3.0 world. Adham has received multiple awards for his work, including First Prize for Choreography and Cultural Entrepreneur of the Year. He is a graduate of New York University, Sciences Po Paris, Amsterdam University of the Arts, and Cairo Opera House. Adham, Hafez.
Thank you so much, Onye. I mean, what an honor to be presented by you and to be in conversation with you, and to know that you actually were there when I gave my crazy talk a few months ago in Essen in Germany. So this is just an absolute pleasure. And thank you everybody at Dance NYC for having me today, and for everyone who's tuning in. I'm actually calling from Cairo, Egypt. So I'm back in the motherland, and it feels just so beautiful to be dialing in from here today. I followed the link of the indigenous digital maps to see where I am and how it's described, and there's nothing there. So this is a conversation I would like to have with you all, not today, but I am calling from where I believe I come from. And it's just, yeah, it's a pleasure to be dialing in from here. Thank you so much for bringing up Wizara and bringing up HaRaKa. And yeah, I can't wait to open up a bit more on these things and our ideas about the community of dance and its future across multiple cultures and continents.
Thanks so much, Adham. Next up, we have Chris Walker. Chris Walker is the director of the Division of the Arts at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He is a professor in the dance department and the founding artistic director of the First Wave program in the Office of Multicultural Arts Initiatives. Walker creates contemporary dance, theater, and performance art rooted in the visual and performance cultures of the African diaspora. He works in the disciplines of dance, theater, film, and video. Chris?
Thank you so much, Onye, for that wonderful introduction and for the glowing welcome to this conversation. I got emotional as you spoke about that charge. In fact, I felt charged, purposeful, and centered. Thank you for that grounding opening. I am Chris Walker. I am professor in the dance department at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and director of the Division of the Arts. I'm happy to be here with you. I am sitting in a dressing room backstage at the Wisconsin Union Theater. I have a short afro and my beard is in a drop twist and I'm wearing a black sweater. I'm coming to you from Madison, Wisconsin. Wisconsin campus, UW-Madison, sits on ancestral Ho-Chunk land, a place they called Tejo, meaning 4 lakes. And today, UW-Madison works in harmony with the Ho-Chunk Nation and the 12 other indigenous groups here in a project we call Our Shared Future, so we can better understand those histories so that we can chart a new path forward together. I'm excited to join this group.
Wow, thank you so much. A little bit of foreshadowing as to where this conversation could go. All right, up next, my girl, Kamal Sinclair. Kamal is making the word more beautiful as the executive director of the Guild of Future Architects and an artist at Sinclair Futures. She served as an external advisor to the MacArthur Foundation's Journalism and Media Program, Onassis Foundation, New Museums, New Inc., Onyx Studio, Civic Signals for Freedoms, a member of Sharon Chang's Family Office, Dream Office of Imaginary Friends, and as an advisory board member to MIT's Center for Advanced Virtuality, Starfish Incubator, and iBeam. I feel like I am speaking from the deck of the starship. Previously, Sinclair was the director of Sundance Institute's New Frontier Labs program for 7 years, which supports artists working at the convergence of film, art, media, and technology. During that period, she consulted for the Ford Foundation's Just Films program on a research project aimed at furthering equality in emerging media, which resulted in Making a New Reality. Sinclair got her start in emerging media as an artist and producer on Question Bridge Black Males. At Question Bridge, where she and her collaborators launched a project with an interactive website and curriculum, published a book, exhibited in over 60 museums and festivals. Kamal Sinclair, let us know, where are you coming from?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that very generous long bio. My name is Kamal Sinclair, and she, her pronouns. I'm coming from the unceded territory of the Tongva, Chumash, and Tatavayan people, AKA Los Angeles. I'm a cisgendered woman from African and European ancestry. I have silver teardrop earrings that you can't really see because I have a black turtleneck and my brown hair is long and curly, kind of covering them up. I have some reddish lipstick on. I wish it was as nice as Shawnee Jamil's. And I have a virtual background of trees and bougainvillea flowers. I won't say much more than what Onye shared, but I can say that I started as a dancer in my disco skirt in early childhood, and, did my first international tour at 12 through Southeast Asia and New Zealand, went to Tisch for experimental theater, ran a dance company, did Stomp for 6 years as a performer. So 27 years total, I had a wonderful career as a dancer. And then I kind of got frustrated with, especially seeing like the incredible kind of resources and wealth that was being created in the space of like the commercial theater of Stomp, and then going and, kind of collaborating with this incredible creative community, mostly BIPOC in the Brooklyn and the Lower East Side. And so I went and got my master's in business to try to do a little Robin Hooding for artists of color and other marginalized voices. And so that shifted me into an artist stewardship position, which I've been in since 2008. And it was really cool because one day we had Judith Jameson in town in Atlanta from, with the company at the Fox Theater. And she took a group of young professional Black women to dinner and said to us, I have thousands of people that want to get on my stage, but I have no one to pass this company to in terms of that stewardship, that level of being able to steward these amazing dancers. So I guess I kind of took that hat on, and right when the explosion of technology and social media happened. So I've been working to navigate and steward in both IRL and digital spaces since. Thank you so much.
Indeed, Robin Hooding for BIPOC artists, I think, is a wonderful bridge for me to jump across and introduce our last panelist, but not least indeed, Kristopher McDowell. He has been working as an actor and dancer since he was 7, and by his late 20s, moved into various aspects of performing arts, management, and production. Today, he works to deepen relationships with artists and presenting institutions, seeks opportunities for international cultural exchange and maximum community impact. He is the founder and served as CEO for KMP Artists for 13 years in the United States and is responsible for the company's expansion into Asia Pacific. He's produced over 12,000 performances in North America and toured major companies between 17 countries in the Americas, Asia, and Middle East. Big time, y'all. Additionally, McDowell served as faculty member of the American Musical and Dramatic Academy, Los Angeles campus, where McDowell also attended at their New York City campus prior to undergraduate studies at Fordham University and Empire State College. Today, he's a sought-after speaker for conferences and festivals around the globe and has been working as program advisor for various digital and hybrid retreats, conference programming, and development for the industry, including but not limited to the first Dance USA digital conference in June of 2020. Kristopher.
What an honor to be here and share space with these incredible leaders. And thank you, Onye, so much. Thank you to Dance NYC for the invitation. So I'm cisgender, he, him, white male. I have Scottish and Dutch heritage, but 5th generation USA. I am currently joining from the lands of Lenape people. I happen to be in New York City completely by chance. And I was born on the lands of the Ramaytush people, which is San Francisco, California. I wear a gray sweater, light rim glasses, and I have a bit of a shadow from a New York City sunset coming behind me.
Beautiful. Thank you all for coming into the circle, and I welcome you all to turn your cameras on and let's get into it. Let's get started. So calling off all of our panelists into community, I'm going to reread this little just snippet that I wrote about them, really. These are systems thinkers, rule rewriters, and architects of context. In this time when we globally have no choice but to acknowledge that we all can feel paradigms shifting around and through and within us, who better to call into community? So let's do it. I'm going to start us off as we are here in the Dance NYC circle. I'm going to link dance to body and start there. So my first question, which is going to go to Kamal to start us off, is what is body to you? You already gave us an indication that you were a dancer and you came powerfully from dancing as a performance artist. What is body to you now? And how is it important in the work that you're doing now?
Ooh, that's a great question. Kind of coming up, I always had these two kind of modes, the cerebral and the embodied. And I would go from loving Tetris and spreadsheets to going into almost trance-like improvisational dance at hip hop clubs in the 90s and the kind of work that we did in my theater company. And, you know, that kind of mode of embodied relationship to your body that transcends your own body, like it's almost outer body experience, feels like you're falling into this interstitial space, which I'm sure we all kind of relate to, between kind of like dimensions and meditation and all of that thing. Even if you're in tightly choreographed spaces, you're kind of having this beautiful mind kind of relationship with architecture, bodies in space, carving space, shaping it, geometry, physics, and all of those kind of, so it's just this crazy thing. But now that I'm kind of been at this intersection of science, technology, and the arts, particularly coming as a dancer background, body, I mean, it's just crazy. Like body becomes code. Like we are code. You know, there's this blood memory within us. There's a way that moving physically unleashes that blood memory. And so when you start to think about all of this kind of technology, which might be kind of channels for us to understand something that is a very embodied experience, almost like a medium is literally a medium. It you know, you go into a virtual space, you go into an augmented reality space, you go into a book, and you're going into this space that transcends and transports you somewhere, but that almost feels like an allusion to who you are, what your physical and visceral and lived experience, embodied experience is. So yeah, it kind of blew my mind when I started looking at some of this stuff and the way our body is code.
Kristopher, does that resonate for you as a choreographer, someone who's working actively in the body and making work, but you're also very much working as an administrator and as a crafter, sort of a choreographer of curriculum and educational experiences for students? How is body sort of manifesting in the various arenas that you're working?
Central. The body is central in centering a young person's identity in who they are, why they are, how they are. It is where they go to for information about the self. I have to bring in an ancestor in the room. And this is Regenerative, a mentor. Because one of the things I learned at 19 from Regenerative was the idea of the body as a weapon of cultural self-defense against those who would want to keep you in their grip. And he affirmed that the body was and is a site of resistance and a site of freedom and a site of liberation from that which would want to keep you oppressed or subjugated. For example, he would say, you can ban the lyrics, but you can't ban the tune, right? And it is the tune that the body is, that is of the body. So yes, for me, the body is central to these conversations, in our identity, in how we are, and in our ability to recognize and love another person.
Body as code, body as medium, body as weapon, and cultural location. Adham, I was so inspired by the way that your work resists time. And for so many of our diaspora dance forms, particularly from what I know from the African diaspora, we always have been jumping across time using body and dance, right? So I was really interested in you just sort of asserting yourself as a time traveler. And so I'm interested, how does the body sit when you jump a few years into the future, 50 or so? Where is the body in that leap?
Thank you so much for this connection between the different times and spaces and bodies in the room. For me, jumping through time has to do with just wanting to invite people to think critically of the present, but to use the tool of time travel as a dramaturgy to suspend a lot of our ethical or political judgments that we might immediately activate if we are thinking about the here and now. So when we created this work that you referenced in 50 years or so, as the name says, we were talking about what could happen in 50 years or so in terms of climate crisis, but we were using a lot of jumping back and forth to look at the Suez Canal, which was dug 152 years ago now, because the production is from a couple of years back, and looking at something that happens a century and a half ago, and the vortex that it creates physically inland when you connect the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea, and the kind of migration that happens from one marine biological reality to another, two seas that should have never been in contact. But also what happens in terms of migration from European settler colonialists moving to Africa, whether North Africa or East Africa, and the other way around. What happens then when workers try to leave North Africa and to move to Europe, and they end up being slave workers, which a lot of people don't know, but so many of the families of workers that were made by force to dig the Suez Canal, their grandchildren ended up digging the marshes for World War I in Europe. They were kidnapped to go to Europe to dig marshes of a war that they had no part of. And while we're looking at space and looking at time in this way, we had to, in a way, suspend the pain of facing time now by talking in the future, which is a tool that comes back when we worked on this piece called the Extraterritorial Ministry of Arab Culture, my favorite title, or ETMAC for short, which again was about this time. What would happen if 4 years from today, further war and displacement would create this population of artists that are displaced living in a diaspora, and there is no cultural politics that represents them. There are no funding systems that support them. There is no canon that talks to them or with them or even about them. Can we create a structure, an extraterritorial ministry that supports Arab artists and intellectuals in the diaspora, which then 4 years later, so we created in 2017, in 2021, the group of people that created this work with me, Adam Koharski, Mona Gamil, and Lamia Gouda, we came together and we said, well, let's turn this play into a startup. And we created Wizara, which is this blockchain-based ecosystem that tries to do what dramaturgically we were trying to do in the fiction world. So as we use time to suspend reality in a theatrical environment, we started thinking, can we use these performance pieces as a dramaturgy to intervene within the blockchain cryptographic world, but also within the startup world in general, and try to figure out a different kind of economy for the arts.
Wow. Yeah. So literally time changing, and in terms of art making, but then flipping that script back into actual interventions in the technology through which value and profit is being made. The Suez example was so evocative for me to hear the narratives of those bodies working to open up this canal that was going to create so much wealth for others literally through the body of one's own land, using one's own body. And the stories that you told about people being buried right there on the spot where their last shovel hit was so profound. And the irony of the narrative of the performer in the future, speaking in this way of the past, and then these same performers as Kristopher says, turning that tool into a weapon of self-protection, and at least an attempt of self-protection. And I think that this sort of attention to the technology of the organization of making money, I think is, again, a nice bridge to Kristopher to talk. Can you talk a little bit about body? And in the work that you do is so organizational and gets bodies into places with other bodies and gets bodies around the world. And can you talk about how body, maybe your organization's orientation towards body has been and is shifting into the present and future?
It is mobilizing bodies, most certainly. I think there's a genuine desire for more immersive experiences with artists and community. And I think that's been a hunger for a long time. I do see a lot more activity, funding, interest in doing things outside of the traditional proscenium experience. So how we're relating to one another physically in person in that immersive connectivity. Thinking about these hallowed halls, are they safe spaces? Why are there people who don't come in? And what is sacred to them? How do we meet them where they're sacred? I think communities really need more time to connect with artists instead of 1 or 2 nights, or maybe if they're lucky, they get to come in for a week. What is the continuity of those physical relationships, in-person relationships? And I think that what Adham is talking about is right on the money. And I'm using that word as a businessman purposefully because hybrid options with digital and in-person and the ability for the in-person audience or community to also engage with those digitally. What does all of that look like? And how can we access larger audiences for various artists and build larger audiences for various artists through that platform? But really, I'm finding the big shift in my conversations with the artists that I'm lucky to work with is really, why do we want to go to this community? What's the purpose? How is the repertoire going to serve? And so it's a very different conversation for people who have been in this business longer than I've been alive, because they have absolutely a relevant and important wish list of places they want to go, but in really deepening into the why. Why are we doing it, and what kind of impact are we going to have? I could go on, but I feel like that's already a departure slightly.
No, actually, you're getting us right into my next question. I'm going to read it anyway, but in some ways we're already there. So what is the reality these days of bodies in community, bodies in place? I think that at the beginning of this period of us all being on Zoom, lots of people already were on Zoom. Breakdancers had been sending VHS tapes to each other across the world since the 80s, y'all. So, but we all kind of got into that same place of the body being code as well as presence in the last 2 years. And I think that there has collectively been a feeling of loss, right? Like we're missing something. We miss each other. We miss the sensuality, the immediacy of a crowd of 1,000 people or 100 people or even 25. So what are the tools and the methods of facilitating that bodies in community, bodies in place now, and what are they going to be in the future that facilitate the when, the where, the who, and the how of gathering and connecting, of engaging with each other. Specifically, what do these changes mean for you? What of these changes are you making? And what are you planning next?
So I'm clearly going to be the business guy in the conversation, but this is totally fine with me. Income diversification is critical for everyone in our industry. We were barely sustainable in the performance and ticket selling touring model. So in that process, what I've recognized with my incredible partners at Rhizome Consulting is that we're really looking at returning artists to the center of the ecosystem. For whatever reason, wink, wink, the buyer became the center of the ecosystem. And so I think we're also thinking about how we do business and how we market and how we position, right? And how are we building the relationships? It's really a process where we'd like to see the buyer be more transparent about what's going on and the challenges that they're really authentically facing with getting people into their doors. And what does that look like? How can the artist then respond creatively and physically to address those issues? I think a lot of the work right now is appealing to funders and private philanthropists to talk about the way that we can lead artists and companies first and think about the artist in terms of how they would build a tour. Right now, a lot of the funding that's supporting dance touring, for example, goes to subsidize the artist fee that's being paid by the buyer. What my partners and I are talking to funders about now is what if the artist justifies where they want to go, why they want to go, and are funded directly. And if that happens, shouldn't we be looking at co-presentation models? In some cases, it might be wiser to self-present. And so how do we partner in that way? I guess I'm starting to talk about the physicality of what that looks like between me and the buyer on behalf of the artist. But I think that the artists really, they resonate with members of the community when they can get in and not have that filter that the presenting institution already has in place or thinks, but to have the opportunity for them to come in, do a residency, do an envoy type program to determine whether or not it's even going to be important for the company to tour, the full company to tour, or maybe the piece changes entirely. Maybe they just come back for another residency. So just thinking about how we're really making those human and physical connections.
Anyone want to jump in that one?
Well, very quickly, I think part of talking about bodies in space is also travel regulations, which for the past couple of years, a lot of people who have travel rights experience for the first time that they cannot just get on a plane and go somewhere, which is something that has defined my entire life and career as someone who's born African and Arab, which is the only reality and condition that shapes my relationship to space and to travel. I do not have the same travel rights that other, for instance, American colleagues would have. So many times I've had to hire actors, play roles I was supposed to play just because I couldn't get the visa to go on tour. So many times I would go on tour with my company, like when we did ETMAC, the Extraterritorial Ministry of Arab Culture. Oh, and apologies to the interpreters. I talk fast. I need to learn how to talk a little bit slower. I'm just very excited to be here with you all tonight, or today. It's tonight because it's midnight in Cairo, but it's only 6 p.m. over there. I got stuck in Tunisia for like a long while on a tour. I wasn't supposed to be there. And the tour just had to continue without me. And they had to go to Italy and then to Switzerland. And I'm stuck in Tunisia trying to make friends locally there and dig some roots for I don't know how long, because when will my visa be issued and when will I have my passport again? When I worked with Noura Murad, who's one of the leading figures in dance in Damascus in Syria, and we tried to bring her to New York in 2016 in a festival I was curating, well, she could not leave. I mean, the country is, no one could leave. We had to have her perform on Skype. And then she turned part of her choreography into emails that she sent to incredible dancers in New York, like Jen Rosenblatt and other wonderful humans who were like, I will learn your dance. And it changed the entire choreography. And the choreography then, the piece was called Proxy Girls. And it was all these girls and boys who had to learn Noura's piece to perform it in New York. So this is something that we tend to think of as a reality, and it is a dividing reality. But I was surprised to know that so many of my colleagues do not even know. I have colleagues who tell me things like, oh, but if it's only for 3 days, I'm sure you can just go to Canada. No, I can't go anywhere without having a visa issued. I can't just go to a country. And it's something that I wonder, I mean, there are wonderful people and organizations working on it, but there's a kind of literacy about travel rights that I think is important to work on within the presenters sphere in the US and the curators and the fellow artists, because I think it's important to know the rights that we have and you and others don't, but also to work together. Maybe there's some extreme actions that we need to take together to really show how this destroys programs and destroys festivals and destroys residencies.
Nice.
Absolutely. I just wanted to kind of respond to that, actually to both, because, again, I'm coming from this lens of this intersectionality between tech, art, and science. And when I think about, bodies and space, bodies and community, I think that there's this, not to be binary at all, but there is this tech as a trap of the body is something that is similar, like as politics, as borders are a trap of the body. There's also technology that's the trap of the body. Even right now, I feel very constrained in this box, right? As dancers, this whole conference, can't have that, molecules kind of bouncing off of each other and sound, and how does that make our bodies move? But there's also been, this phase of desktops or, screens that have kind of honed us into this visual part, using the visual sphere as a way of engaging, or fingers as input. And when you also think of the traps of surveillance and data surveillance around the bodies, and all that stuff can be the trap. But then, and as Melissa Painter, who's an artist and technologist that works with dance and movement so beautifully, she talks about how the technology design, not having dancers in the room, has been very much biased towards the to the cerebral place of knowledge, to this head as the symbol of what technology needs to be. Even when you think about like robots and AI and all this stuff, but because dancers haven't been in that conversation, the technology has been limited from connecting with the body, and in many ways de-evolves the body. When you think about this wave of technology. Technology has been around forever, since the beginning of humanity in one way, shape, or form, but this particular 40 years of technology development. And so what I'm excited about, what I hope for, what in ways that we can potentially intervene by busting those silos between, technology design and arts is can we redesign these tools, just like we have to redesign our political systems, to unleash the body? How do we optimize, the trust that we have, the design for having enough trust and faith, and having a system of justice as the baseline for communities to utilize what is the potential positive sides of this? For me, when I first got into this space, I was astounded by the ways in which different kinds of technology were allowed to give me a macro view of the visibility of the choreography of the human body, the entire global human body. I started to see the particulates, the particles, the ways in which we as an organism are working in flow and with each other. It's like grand choreography. And that was something that I never had visibility into other than in my imagination, which is powerful, but to see kind of these visualizations of how that works, to think about geo-aware tech, the way symphonies are being geo-aware designed to the landscapes of place. How is the body relating to the landscape in that way? You know, I think about, there's a project called Kinfolk that just released that has us reevaluating the architecture around us through the stories of the land that we stand on, the monuments we look at. Again, moving people through geo-aware technology, through space, to in real space, to reevaluate who we are. And the, you know, even outside of that, there's also this kind of, how do we bring the ancestors and bring the progeny into space, you know, with our bodies. I have this, there's this one project that was a bike tour through Williamsburg and Brooklyn, where they had you stop at these different places. And there was this one building where Nina Simone had showed up to a Black nationalist event. And there was this video of her in pure movement, no singing at all. Like, you'd never seen Nina Simone just kind of go into trance. And they created this kind of, you know, virtual experience that led you through geo-aware technology to that spot, to that hollowed ground, and to where your body was in that same space, where the kind of atoms underneath your feet vibrated with the atoms under her feet in that time span. So I'm not trying to wax poetic or philosophical or anything, but that is the tension that I see every day, is where does technology unleash potential and creativity and unleash the body, and where does it trap it? So.
Wow. I mean, wax away. This is, I mean, and it's happening in the intermediary space between what all of you are bringing to the table, that there always were limitations. We haven't always been aware of the limitations. As Kristopher says, the model wasn't working that well already. As Adham says, half of you or half of us haven't been aware of how limited, how many of us already were. But then in every case, there's a way that artists flip that limitation into a next level possibility. And you're talking about dancers being in the room when the technology gets created, that actually flips the performative moment for the audience to actually be technologically facilitated to make that moment of transportation from their own bodies. And the dancers' work happens at another level. It's amazing. Kristopher, there was something that I was thinking particularly about you. There's this PBS video, one of the students in your First Wave program. This is the program with the hip hop students that I referred to in the opening on Wisconsin-Madison's campus. And one of those students said something in that video that just struck me. He said that program was one of the most hip hop things he's ever seen. And I was just like, I need Kristopher to talk about that. Like, how did you hold space to make that happen? Because I know what it's like on a PWI. How does that come true? How does that ring true in the context of a colonialist formation, like a predominantly white Research One institution?
I think, yeah, thank you for that question. I think how it has rang true for the last 250 or so years, I think is a similar approach to the space, that we create space for us and can. And it's a thing, the exercise of the creative intellect and the exercise of the creative imagination, so that even in a space of crisis, one can find love and one can find beauty, and the body can escape that space, that physical space, spiritually, right? A good example of that, Onye, is maybe you and your partner listening to your favorite song and you hug up on each other and you start that dance and you know the family is watching. So there's a little performative thing to it, right? Mm-hmm. The family is watching, but after a while you lose them, you forget them, and both of you go on a journey together and you have a conversation and you go through memories and you go through future planning and you travel, right? That the ability to find each other and find safety in bodies and to be able to travel spiritually to new ground, the knowledge that you have the power to do that is what we call the exercise of the creative imagination. And then this idea of collective centering. So you have to be able to see the God in each other, right? And to be able to create that community together. That what we started to build was a foundation that required the participation of every single person who entered that space, right? When we think of maroon communities existing, all of the stories of those spaces speak to that idea of pluralism and collective centering, and all of these different bodies and background and information can exist together, and the space is even the more richer for it. And so I don't know that I applied anything special other than what we have been doing here in the West to make sense of an experience that otherwise makes no sense. And the beginning of hip hop, what they call, well, hip hop has been going on for generations before the quoted date of that hip hop party that DJ Kool Herc threw, right? So that Sedgwick Avenue party is quoted as, the birth. And what he did was the exercise of the creative imagination by extending the breakbeat, by using two turntables and playing that beat over and over again. He created new space where there wasn't.
Yes.
We've been doing that for generations.
Yes.
In creating that new space, people could now come, somebody else could scratch and become the most flashiest. In creating that new space, dancers could democratically compete and strengthen their skills. In creating that new space, people could now tell stories through rhythm, through poetry, right? That we enjoy today as rap, but it was the creation of a new space that allowed that formation of what then become a cultural identity to happen. And so all these other manifestations of that idea, right? Graffiti writing, we are here, right? Become an expression of this new cultural identity that we can connect to. And because it is about the liberation of the body, the individual body that's rooted in the collective, you see hip hop manifest in Cuba, in Venezuela, in South Africa, in West Africa, in everywhere any group of people are oppressed. It becomes a medium that they can access to express themselves.
Indeed. Indeed.
So I don't know that I did anything special. That was a great compliment from that student, but maybe it is the most hip hop thing they've ever experienced because it is rooted in those ideas that it is the collective, it is the group. Every single cohort shifts what becomes the programming because it is designed for them.
Yeah, it was such a liberated call. It felt like such a liberated call to hear that statement be made. And I appreciate the reference back to Kool Herc and the flipping of a technological moment into almost like a intermediary space where, what you said, creating space where there was none.
Right.
And so our next question, I'm going to keep you on deck to lead us off for the next question. I think you've already started slipping into that. And in some ways, now I'm questioning my question. Like, is it really, I want to talk about the future now, but so many of the answers that you all have given here are really saying we've been doing this a long time. This is what we always do, but I'm going to ask it anyway, and maybe we'll see what happens. So each of you is known as a maker or producer or facilitator in the context that you have been recently and are now. So assuming that our contexts are now changing at an ever increasing rate. I mean, it feels like that to me, but I do remember sitting down with my dad in the 2000s, and my father had lived through the Nigerian Civil War, and he looked at me, he was like, Onye, none of this is new. And I kind of rolled my eyes and I was like, this cell phone thing is new, right? So but that's why I'm questioning my question now. I'm like, is it really new from a spiritual perspective? But anyway, Onye, stay focused, stay focused. Here's the question. What is your relationship to future? Not the future, to future. Are you preparing for it? Are you or not? And if you are, how are you preparing for it? And then here's my real question is, if you could have, if I was a genie in a bottle and I could grant your wish, what do you need? What do you need from us? How could we help you in your preparations for future? Kristopher, you're first.
Wow, this is a big one because the future is now, eh? And the future is tomorrow, and the future is yesterday. I think of Bob Marley. When I first looked at the question, I think of Bob Marley. Most people think great God will come from the sky, take away everything and make everything right? But if you know what life is worth, you will look for yours on earth. Now you see the light, stand up for your right. A lot of people know the chorus of that song, get up, stand up for your right. But what he was really talking about, I believe, is that the future is here. And it is what we do in the now that makes the tomorrow possible or different or a part of who you are. You lose out if you're not standing in the authority of those who came before. You lose out if you're not leaning into the lessons of those who come before. And so how am I preparing for future? I think the way I go about my work, whether it's creating artwork, this piece I'm working on, Rent a Tile, looks at that same idea I was sharing of loving. And it's a 24 by 24 tile that couples step on and allow themselves to go into that future that they want to imagine, to go into that past that they want to revisit, to journey to that place that they feel they need to be. And this is something that I was working on just before the pandemic, but the pandemic affirmed even more. Because what I realized I was missing in that current future, because that future was also predicted, a world where we're so disconnected and socially distanced and have to communicate through technology. What I was missing was the kinetic energy that is transferred in live performance, that vibration that you get from another human being. But what I also learned was that I could interact and connect with you, Onye, through this Zoom, which is literally just a medium for us to connect in the moment live. And I could still gain something. My body could still feel the emotional sense of purpose that I felt in the beginning. I straightened up in my chair as you spoke. That was a physiological response transferred through. So the future is now. And the work, I believe, is in strengthening the next generation to be able to see that their future is in there now as well. And what do I need? How do we get to an understanding of, back to an understanding of the arts and creative expression as central to who we are as human beings? If someone can help me figure that out, help us understand that as core. And I saw Kristopher responded, right? Because even on the business side of it, that sense of who you are and the ability to then connect that physical, spiritual being with the other, that is what I need. Because I believe that collective centering will help us solve it together.
Can I piggyback on something that Chris said? One of my favorite quotes from Zora Neale Hurston is, "The present is like an egg. It was laid by the past and has the future inside it." So, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the future is always about now. And although we're trying to be the best ancestors we can be right now, we're also, you know, as I think Adham talks about, we're like trying to also be in a space of justice, of, you know, of joy, of wellness in the now as well. And so over the like since the pandemic started, the community, the Guild of Future Architects that I'm a member of, we have been running these things called Futurist Writers Rooms on Zoom. And we've been inviting just a real intersection of people to come and to think about, okay, this is a disruption, it's changing the moment. What does it mean to go forward? What do we want to leave behind? And we always start with going backwards, and we put ourselves in a inflection point in the past where people before us, it could have even been ourselves 20 years ago, had to make a decision in the fog of the future, right? You don't have a crystal ball. And we look at, you know, what decision was made and what the outcomes were and what decision could have been made. And there's a million different decisions that could have been made, and kind of follow a thread of speculative historiography. And what is so powerful about that is it puts you in the power of a decision by going back. You step in that person's shoes and you go, oh my God, like for example, we worked with the Future of Food Systems, and they talked about this, you know, one class of Congress that made a decision that changed our entire food system, from family farms to these like monocrops, all the stuff that sucked the nutrition out of it, that created inequities, like all this stuff. And when we look at the Congress makeup, they were all children or young people during the Depression. So although greed and, you know, big farm, big, you know, all that stuff was part of it, there was also perhaps this trauma response, maybe unconscious trauma response to, you know, scarcity, fear of scarcity, all of those things. And then they had the baby boomers as their children. So they had to negotiate the kind of largest population of mouths to feed. And so we kind of looked back and said, okay, what can we learn from those times in terms of how we're going to react now to the trauma that we're experiencing? So I think there's something powerful about that in terms of trying to understand our future, looking back to look forward. But the one thing I just wanted to say about this in terms of the arts is that, and I'm trying not to go too far because we're running out of time already, but when I first started at Sundance, you know, I'm a dancer coming into a film world. I'm like intimidated. I don't know nothing about this stuff. But I sat down with my boss, who was the #2 employee that built the institution from the ground up over 40 years. And she said, your job is to find artists that make meaning. And I didn't understand what she meant until probably years later. I thought I did. I was like, oh yeah, artists, they're doing meaningful work. They're, you know, doing critique, they're doing the whatever. And it wasn't until later that I realized artists that not just report on the human condition or express the human condition, but artists that actually contextualize the reality of our existence. Like they actually are giving us a sense of who we are. And then being in the science and tech world, you know, you get this close-up look to reality shifting constantly. Something you thought was true is no longer true. These like, you know, flat earth moments that are all of a sudden you find who you really are in relationship in the universe. And it's the artists that show up to go, what does that mean for us as a lived, embodied experience? And you start to see surrealism in the Western canon, you know, these kind of movements of art and philosophy to try to help us understand and just help us feel that sense. And then, so when you talk about the future, I think it's just a construct of time that is very fluid and hard to put your head around. But you look at these epochs of change, like 500 years ago, mass media showed up. And although it didn't do anything different in terms of expressing the human condition, it expanded the visibility of that, like seeing Earth from space and telling that story, you know, seeing the front lines of Vietnam War from your living rooms for the first time. Like it just expanded the context of our ability to, you know, engage. And now we're 40 years into another epoch changing moment of, you know, exploding. I mean, bioengineering, you know, I mean, artificial intelligence, like there's so many things that now are breaking reality again, that the artists and the philosophers and the people from the humanities, that's what I see as, you know, one of the calls to action is how do the artists show up to do that work that our ancestor artists have done. in contextualizing our reality.
Yeah.
If I may just jump in and maybe not be so eloquent, but I think ultimately, the performing arts often are apologizing for ourselves. And then I find, as I'm so passionate about the dance world, that then the dance world is also considered a bastard child of the performing arts sector. So this also has to be a narrative shift as we talk to ourselves, as we talk to one another. And that level of organization, I think, is that space that Kristopher is talking about us moving into together. And that means the silos have to go away.
So eloquent and efficient and right on point. Listen to you. Yeah, I'm hearing that. I'm hearing that each of you, in some ways, is letting artists know that our time is now. It always has been now, and we are the ones that show up when everything falls apart, and put our bodies on a line, the line, or in the space, and open up to express what it is. Make sense of it by allowing it to flow through us. Adham, you're at the transition between this conversation about future and time. I mean, we started off talking to you about time, of course. So is it okay if no, go ahead. I'm not gonna.
No, I was just gonna say one thing that I was thinking about when they're talking, but I didn't want to interrupt you. There's this really very interesting, like sometimes I like just going to like the material of language. And in Hindi and in Urdu, the word kal means tomorrow, but also means yesterday. They have one word to talk. So you have to know what context to understand if they're talking about something that happened or something that could happen. And I think this is brilliant. Yeah. And there's an incredible group of thinkers and artists and performers who built this institution called House of Kal. So Kal is the word that both means tomorrow and yesterday. And they're based in Karachi, Colombo, and Berlin. So I think anyone who wants to think about confusing time and space in a way that is actually very generative politically, check these people out, because sometimes we just need to leave our etymology and our genealogy of thinking and of practicing to truly enter another way of planning what could be done. But I'm sorry to interrupt you. It was just
no, that's perfect.
Simmering in my mind while I was listening.
I'm going to throw the last question out there because time is we still have some time, but I want to throw it out there so it's all in the mix. I'll put it all on the table. And Adham, you're going to lead us off here. So in your lecture given in 2021 at Symposium in Germany, you gave a lecture called Against Recognition. And so I'm biting a question that you put on the table that you took from the theorist Irit Rogoff. And that question is, how can we know what we do not know how to know? So that's the fourth question. This question served as an undercurrent in your work in 50 years or so. How can we know what we do not know how to know, which gets right to the core of it. I felt like, wow, that's the question I've been seeking to answer forever since I became conscious of who I was as an African person born in exile. As we bring our discussion to a rest and we collectively turn to the open road, how can we reckon with this question, each of us? Adham, start us off.
I think it's a beautiful question because, and the way I was speaking about recognition, there's two things that I was occupied with when I was writing this talk and in general. Recognition as in, this is a recognized artist or this is an artist that received recognition. I have a big problem with this because it invokes a whole list of institutionalities and that to be recognized, you might have gotten this award or performed in prime time or in a world stage. And all these terms that we take for granted in the industry are problematic terms that we need to stop and ask ourselves, what does this mean? You know, if a book is published by Duke University Press, is it more important than one published by Cairo University Press? And where do we find knowledge that we think is worthy of our time to learn and to grow. So how do we know what we don't know how to know in this direction of recognition as in recognized, but also things being recognizable or not. I find it so exciting when I see something that I don't know what the hell it is. I'm like, is this dance or is this performance art? Is this theater? What is this digital art? What is digital art? So when I like this stumble mumble when I'm there and I don't find the right word or term and the convention itself is not revealing itself to me, I think this is great. So to not be able to recognize things means that we acknowledge a sense of renewed humility and curiosity in ourselves. And I think these are two essential tools that we need for the future: humility and curiosity.
Well, you know, I can always talk, but I totally agree. And it just struck me, that question. I mean, obviously that's a very provocative question. How can we know what we don't know how to know? And it just reminded me of, you know, there was a piece that came to Sundance that was this really phenomenal kind of augmented reality virtual space. I mean, they just put you LiDAR scanning of the Amazon. It was just incredibly beautiful, immersive experience. And it spoke about, you know, the first woman to become a shaman in this particular tribe. And it was a beautiful piece. And then I had somebody from the Amazon that worked with a community of different, you know, tribes, indigenous communities that, and she said, you know, it's so interesting because that looks like that whole story, you know, you can look at it from a very feminist, European feminist or American feminist lens of breaking through the glass ceiling. But she said, but what it doesn't tell is this deeper history that may not even be known anymore, but that the use of kind of medicines, even very different that are unknown to us, but like ayahuasca, is that, you know, thousands of years ago, whatever it was, women had this like transcendent experience of, I don't know, like a embodied / metaphysical experience that's related to the ways in which women cycle, the way in which women give birth, the way in which women have this particular connection to, you know, a sense of knowledge, a sense of reality. And so they kind of honed this medicine to give men a view into that experience. And so when you talk about how to know, I mean, I, as an American woman with very feminist frameworks, I wouldn't have even understood this outside of outside of that specific kind of, you know, having to fight for your rights framework, which is very relevant in a lot of places. But in this sense, it was about a generosity from a woman to from women to men. Like, anyway, it just reminds me of how there's so much that has been marginalized in the knowledge systems, you know, that are dominated by the West, that we are so kind of at a scarcity or a deficit because they're not able to kind of penetrate into the wider conscious. So I don't know, that just came to mind when you were talking, Adham.
Here I am again with something that's probably not at all eloquent, but I think it's relevant. There's a Jim Henson movie, and I use this line all the time, is that it's like Jello down your pants. So it's that, and now I'll reveal that I'm a big yogi, but it's that leaning into the discomfort, which, I mean, that's the new space. We're constantly creating that space.
That's a great analogy. Leaning into the discomfort. When I yearn to read the paper, and I believe I made outreach accordingly. When I saw the question posted, how can we know what we do not know how to know? And if I process that solely through how my work, my upbringing, my worldview which centers and privileges the body, then what is knowing? Right. And as you talked about the paper and spoke about recognition, I started to separate those two things in my head and body. But what is knowing, and is the moment of attained knowledge when we pass on, right? Whereas the time spent here is the process of discovery and constant discovery, which is the humility that Kristopher just spoke about, right? The jello down the pants, the I don't know this, the anxiety, leaning into the discomfort as a way of being. But it made me think about it as it relates to the body. I think of Sandra Fraley's work in Somatics and the phenomenon of the body in an activity, that it's the doer, the mover, who has knowledge through reflection of what those changes are or what is happening inside the body. And so then I think of, again, these ideas of what we do not know has not yet been Kamal coded into our bodies for us to be able to access it. But yeah, I went in a completely different tangent, Adam, and I'm so fascinated by this concept of recognition and the humility that is forced upon one when you realize you don't know something, and to be able to own that humility is power. Thank you for that. I'm looking forward to the paper too.
Kamal, when you made this reference to this, the story of making of medicines to share the transcendent experiences that one group of bodies were having with another group of bodies from an ancestral place, and all of you have been making reference to that moment of not knowing, the jumble of jello, the feeling of jello, your body itself turning to jello, that feeling of fear and exhilaration mixed together with sweat and fatigue, that I think we all know from somewhere in our lives, right? The melting, Kristopher, of that moment of dancing with your partner in front of the family, and then your awareness and the tension of all that, sort of that moment where it all melts away into. It just occurred to me that there are so many ways now with emerging technologies that we are experimenting with that type of generosity in the moment. That's what's happening in the moment. Young people all over the world are jumping into video games and running around with each other in bodies that they can have pink tails and wear cowboy boots and be whatever gender they want. And that is happening right now. We are exchanging those sort of experiences. Is there anything that you are, I don't want to say the word worried. I just said it, but it's something akin to that. Is there as you send us forward, as you send us forward into the unknown, is there anything you want to say, watch out for?
Yeah, I mean, it is crazy. I mean, just on the kind of, I don't know, like some of my positive experiences, then I'll go into where my like red flags come in, but I got to have an experience from a French choreographer who brought a project called VRI to Sundance some years ago, and your body is completely in a kind of motion capture type suit, and you enter into a space with all these other people. We're all getting suited up in these motion capture suits, and then they put the headset on, and then all of a sudden we're in this gorgeous place. And we can see each other, and we're all different kinds of embodied, like we just get randomly put into these different bodies of the dancers that they captured, and the avatar, we're embodied the company of dancers that he works with. And then we start to move together, and there's some dancers that are from the company that are kind of giving us a sense of movement to follow, and we all kind of start to fall into our own improvisational choreography together. And then all of a sudden, the company comes as giants, and we are literally the size of their foot. And then we're dealing with this choreography with giants that is phenomenal. Then they become little tiny dancers that start coming out of the floor that we can hold on our hands and move around and have this like physical experience. And then anyway, it just keeps shifting, scale on us, right? And then when you look at a picture of what they caught, we're just these people that look like we're the most wonky robotic, like these like suits with like little balls of motion capture on us, but we're touching hands. And so you have this like physical grasp with an actual person, but you're having this surreal experience of scale. So I think to what you're speaking about around the ways in which it can shift our, not like a realism, but a surrealism that can give. And even there's a cyborg woman who has embedded technology in her body that is connected to real-time data of earthquakes around the world. And she said that after being with this cyborg technology connecting to her, and she does choreography around it and all this stuff, she started to realize that she can never look at the earth as a rock again. She can only look at it as a breathing, living thing. And so these are the kinds of things that are like, what? Just like change your scale. But simultaneously, we have these, like I said, these design blindfolds on that create these high stakes of limited inclusion, just in terms of, the ways in which we ignored a lot of the red flags that people from the arts or people from, marginalized communities were trying to raise in the industrial age. And we put ourselves into industrial bodies. Like we became, how many of those kind of works of art are trying to express the roboticness of the industrial age that overtook our body? What does that mean for the digital age? We've already seen how screens contract us, but now as we move into AI, and some of the dancers, like I saw this incredible piece called Frankenstein AI, where an AI, a machine learning AI grew based on the social interviews that they had with members of the festival. Then at the end, they did this culminating performance where the AI managed the live drums, the images being projected, and the sound. And there was a dancer with an earpiece that was being given in real time choreography instructions from the AI based on the emotional timbre and data synthesis of the emotional content that the audience was giving in real time. So there's this idea of AI as human beings and human bodies as meat puppets for AI. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Like, I was at a dinner with a huge tech company at South by Southwest, and they were like, AR is going to be AR interfaces, like forget, computers. We're going to have computers all around us and we not have anything physical in front of us. And they said, isn't it going to be amazing when we can do our emails like this? On like a fake, this is with like Magic Leap technology with a fake keyboard. And I was like, if I don't have to put my fingers on a keyboard, you think I'm going to do an email like this? I'm going to do it like this.
Exactly.
So anyway, I think that, yeah, go ahead.
If I can jump in, I think that is what you're saying here is aligned with what I'm thinking about. What is the gem that we leave to move forward, right? Is that the old way is the old way. That was the first thing I jotted down, right? When Onye asked the question, old way is the old way. The wizard has been exposed. We now know, right, that we can put A with Z, right? And it will still work. We now know that we can come together and create new systems. And the system that we're using right now, we won't fall apart. We now know those things because the pandemic forced that type of Renaissance thinking, that type of immediate problem solving, that type of leaning, reaching into the artist, into the community, those basic structures of how we grew as human societies is what we leaned back into during the pandemic. But we did so, Kamal, like you say, with all of the technological advances that we've made, with all of that knowledge in our pockets. And I'm saying that so much can happen now as we move forward, that we use that and bring it forward. The old way is the old way, so we can't listen to those excuses anymore.
How do we know what we do not know how to know? We don't. We just go, and we know that we'll figure it out. Does anyone have any questions for each other? Any last thoughts? I know that time is ticking to the end. Any last thoughts for the open road?
Maybe just to think of how we prioritize certain senses, and how, like, the hierarchy of what we think also knowledge is. Is it something that we read, or something that we taste, or something that was given to me orally, or I learned in a class or from a book? So these hierarchies, it's important to doubt them, because sometimes we already know what we don't know how to know, but we just don't qualify it as knowledge.
And Kristopher, since I'm sitting on a university campus, I have to invoke the young people and the young artists that are trying to figure out what am I getting ready for? How do I prepare myself for the future? How do I make it? What does making it mean? What would you say to the youth?
Was that this Kristopher?
That's for Kristopher McDowell.
Okay, I thought so.
See, I thought university, so we were.
No, you're the one in the working world. You're the one we're preparing them for.
I think it's about, understanding themselves, which I think dance does better than anything, and then to follow that bliss. I mean, it sounds a little cliche, but I really think it's about just getting them into a position of what's really giving you great joy, and how will that affect others. I really think that it's that simple.
Thank you all so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you all for what you've taught me and for what you've taught all of us. Thank you to Dance NYC for the curation of this incredible question and this incredible panel of human beings to share time and space with one another. And I am going to pass our collective mic back to you, Shani.
Thank you so much. What a fantastic and generative panel. I knew this was going to be a good one. Our thanks to each of you for your brilliant contributions to this closing keynote discussion. This brings our 2022 Dance NYC Symposium, Life Cycles, Livelihoods, and Legacies to an end. Thank you, thank you, thank you to each member of the Dance NYC community who have shown up and shown out during this multi-day event. Our artists, dance leaders, speakers, and moderators, your contributions to this symposium have been truly invaluable. Indeed, this work is only possible when it is with and for you. We're so grateful for your willingness to share your truths and for being so generous with your expertise.
To our audience members who have been so fully present and generous in your feedback and participation, thank you. We've seen you dancing, crying, testifying, questioning, and engaging. We look forward to finding ways to continue to serve you and be in community with you this year. To our sponsors who have devoted their time and resources to make sure that this symposium could be. We saw such creativity in the exhibitor hall booths, the gift of being able to peek into ABT's live rehearsals, to ask direct questions to leaders of dance service organizations like HaRaKa Center for Dance Injuries and the Actors Fund, and to get a peek into the world our field is fervently cultivating as we reemerge into the physical dance world with community care at the center of the mission.
Our guest curators, X and George Emilio Sanchez, as well as the Symposium Programming Committee, really helped mold this event into the success that it has been. Thank you for being there over the fullness of this event's development and for being active participants in shaping its evolution. Thank you to our curatorial advisors, Laura Lawson, Maura and Gwen Donahue, Paul Dennis, Aaron Maddox, and Emily Johnson for your insight. I'd also like to acknowledge River Whittle for leading our foundational land acknowledgement. I'd like to thank our producing partners at Full Out Creative, who've been fantastic partners and have brought not just a deep level of excellence, but also light shows and behind the scenes dance breaks and real joy to this work. Thank you. We hope that our collective efforts to create a space for us to reflect on the importance of our creative lineage and the necessity of engaging in intergenerational conversation has created an opportunity for each of you to consider how we exist in relationship to each other. Our future depends on that bone deep knowing. Life cycles, livelihoods, legacies, the compass points in many directions.
And finally, but certainly not least, I want to take a moment to express my gratitude for the team at Dance NYC, who have gone above and beyond to be able to run this event. I want to especially acknowledge the mountain shifting, masterful efforts of the program team, Candace Thompson-Zachary, Izzy Dow, Brinda Guha, and the newest member of our team who has come to carry out the work Candace laid out for us, Shani Jamila. And of course, the entirety of the Dance NYC staff, our board and committees and volunteers, without which this week would not have been possible. As we look to the year ahead, Dance NYC's desire as an organization and collective of workers is to dive deeply, engaging in a spirit of inquiry and learning while returning to more intimate and interdependent community relationships. As we mentioned in the opening keynote, to honor this intention, this year we are going to focus on 3 key activities. First, the launching of a new initiative focused on economic justice for the dance sector, whose anchor activity is to hear from you. Second, to undertake a strategic planning process in order to reflect on our work as an organization and prepare for the years ahead. And last, but certainly not least, to rest. In that spirit, the Dance NYC offices will be closed directly following the symposium from tomorrow, Sunday, March 20th, through Sunday, March 27th for our spring break. We will return on Monday, March 28th, and resume all external services to the field on Monday, April 4th. If there's anything you need, please check out our FAQ page on the Dance NYC website or visit the many resources available to you there. And yes, the majority of the week's content will be available to you on the Whova platform for 2 months through May 20th, 2022. So you can go back and check out the conversations, the chat, all of the wonderful things that you were able to learn and the folks that you were able to connect with. Thank you for trusting us to serve you and for all you do for dance. Here's to another successful year of Dance Symp. And remember, artists are necessary workers. Have a good night.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the Dance NYC 2022 Symposium. This event could not have happened without each and every one of you engaging with the content and sharing your reflections with the community. A special thanks to our funders, the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, the Howard Gilman Foundation, New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, New York State Council on the Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts. A special thanks to our lead corporate sponsor, Con Edison, and our lead dance advocate, Jody Gottfried Arnold. Subsidies for the education and dance worker ticket tiers are made possible by the Arnold Foundation. A special thanks to our leader, host, and partner level sponsors, 92nd Street Y, Harkness Dance Center, Dance Education Library, Cataliotti Law, Full Out Creative, Gibney Dance Center, Coombe Bay Center for African and Diaspora Dance, the Actors Fund, Ballet Hispanico, Fit for Dance, Nai Ni Chin Dance Company, NDI Collaborative for Teaching and Learning, New York Live Arts, and Tom O'Connor Consulting Group. And last, but certainly not least, a special thanks to our Justice, Equity, and Inclusion partners, Art Beyond Sight, Art Space Sanctuary, Asian American Arts Alliance, Center for Traditional Music and Dance, the International Association of Blacks in Dance, Lotus Music and Dance, Museum Arts and Culture Access Consortium, National Association of Latino Arts and Culture, New York Foundation for the Arts, and Women of Color in the Arts. Select 2022 symposium sessions, as well as the rest of the platform, will remain open for the next 2 months. Feel free to return to any and all sessions that remain available to you. Stay connected with us by posting your takeaways on social media using the hashtags DanceSymp, DanceNYC 2022, and DanceSymp2022. On Instagram at dance.nyc, on Twitter at dance.nyc, and on Facebook at dance/NYC. Don't forget to check out the 2022 Symposium Digital Program Book. How are we doing? Did you like a session? Use the like feature on your favorite session. Got feedback for us? Take the post-event survey after March 19th and tell us how we did. Need help? Email us at customerservice@dance.nyc. A special thanks to our broadcast streaming partners at Full Out Creative. Thanks for joining. Counting the days until we can be together again for the 2023 Symposium. Keep in touch at dance.nyc and have a wonderful evening.